Okay, students, I want to explain the simulation of the lab number 3. In this case, we're going to study the friction. Uh, in this simulation, we can change here the type of surfaces. For example, aluminum and steel. If you click, then you have glass on glass, and like that, you can change different surfaces. You can find the coefficients of friction, the coefficient of static friction, and the coefficient of kinetic friction for those surfaces, in your books and also in the internet. With these arrows, we can change the value of the mass of the object that is resting here on the table. So you can increase the value of the mass, so making the object heavier, or you can just decrease mm, the mass of the object. You have this string, so you will be pulling the block, with this string, and then the block will be mm, moving, on the table. And then as you change the type of surfaces in contact, of course, then you are changing, the coefficient of friction that you have, the static friction and the kinetic friction. Now, when you click Start, you see how we obtain a graph of force versus time. So in this graph of force versus time, this maximum value we get here, this is the maximum value of the force of static friction. Remember that the coefficient of static friction is greater than the coefficient of kinetic friction. So this maximum value we reach here is the maximum value of the force of static friction. When the applied force is greater than this maximum value of the force of static friction, that in this case is approximately 1.8, 1.9 newtons, there would be then a decrease in the force of friction because the object have start moving, and then what we have here is the force of kinetic friction. So the force of kinetic friction is a constant value. So we have a force of kinetic friction here in the order of 0.8 newtons, right? So the force of static friction have been increasing together with the applied force. Once the force of static friction reach its maximum value, then the object start moving, and when the object start moving, then now when there is a motion between the surfaces, when there is a relative motion between the surfaces, what we have is kinetic friction. So that's why we have now a constant force of friction, lower than the maximum value of the static friction. So for this example, for example, the force of static friction is in the order of, let me say, 1.8 to 1.9 newtons. The force of kinetic friction is in the order of approximately 0.8 newtons. You can now just reset, and then you can increase the masses, and you can start repeating the experiment again. You can decide to use another pair of surfaces. So you say start, you get a new graph. And then you will be recording, in a table you're going to construct the data about this simulation.